Varnishing your paintings could be a very important thing to do. It'll give that final painting a layer of protection against UV and dust and help to even out the finish. Now for what I do, most of my paintings are either on canvas or panel, so varnishing is a must. For an acrylic airbrush painting on paper, you could definitely varnish them using this technique, but the best way to protect anything on paper is framing behind glass that has an extra coating of UV protection. Here's an example of that for this drawing that I showed a few weeks ago. I have a glass frame here with a matte border, and that matte just gives a little bit of separation between the drawing and the glass. When I'm working on canvas or panel, that's where I'm going to use a varnish. So let me show you how I go about doing that. I've used so many over the years, but my favorite for any acrylic painting is this stuff, Liquitex Professional Gloss Varnish. This is a permanent varnish, it's non-removable, and forms a very, very tough final coating to protect your painting. I'll just lightly mix this up. I don't want to aggressively shake it to get bubbles in there. And then what I do is use a W400 spray gun to apply it. There's also a ton of really great permanent varnishes and clear coats out there. This UV-LS Clear by Createx is excellent. And another one of my favorite paint brands, Golden, also makes a very good varnish for acrylic paintings. But my personal favorite one is this permanent varnish by Liquitex. And you don't need to go with gloss or high gloss. Most varnishes or clear coats are available in both satin and matte as well. This is going to come down to personal preference. My favorite is gloss. Before I go any further, I just want to make it clear that this technique that I'm using here is only for water-based acrylic paintings. That's the only paint that I spray and use through an airbrush these days. The first thing that I want to do here is mix up this varnish. The way I do this is very gently. I just rotate it back and forth a few times for like 15-20 seconds. If it's a brand new bottle like this and sealed, I could use this directly from the bottle. I don't need to strain it and I don't need to reduce it. For the painting itself, I like to let it cure for at least 1 week. Most thin coats of acrylic paint cure within 72 hours, but I like to be safe. I always wait 7 days. Before I varnish any painting, I dust it off, and I do this just using a shop towel or a paper towel. A tack cloth is also a good option, especially one made for water-based paints, but for a canvas, a paper towel is all that's needed to clean off any dust or thin layers of overspray. Make sure you do this with a light amount of pressure and make sure you wait 5 to 7 days. And then to apply the varnish, I always do this outside and wear a respirator. Unless you have some sort of professional extraction system, always do this outside. If you spray any type of varnish inside with a spray gun, like an HVLP or an LVLP, there is going to be a ton of overspray in the air and that room is going to look like a cigar lounge. You do not want to be breathing that in. Do this outside and wear a respirator intended for the varnish that you're using. Again, I'm going to be spraying this varnish directly from the bottle, so I want to spray a little bit higher, around 25 psi. This next part is very, very important. If you're using an easily erasable paint like illustration colors or com art paints and you're painting on a very smooth surface, you want to make sure that you do not apply a heavy coat of varnish, especially for the first and second coat. I'll show you why that is in a little bit, but for now, let's varnish this painting. Again, set to 25 psi, I'm just lightly dusting this varnish over the top, trying to overlap about 40 to 50%. If I miss a few parts or I don't get it perfectly even, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. And while I'm spraying, I'm not pulling all the way back on the trigger, just a little bit to dust on some of this varnish. Now you want this very thin coat to dry for at least 15 minutes. The longer you wait, the better. 20 to 30 minutes is best. Then after 20 minutes, I'll apply the second coat. I'll do this one a little bit heavier. Still, I'm holding the spray gun a little bit farther back, 8-9 inches away. And as I'm doing this, I'm not rotating my wrist. I'm just moving my arm, trying to spray evenly across. Again, I cannot stress this enough. If you're using an erasable paint like illustration colors or com art, this is nothing like clear coating a car with a urethane like 2K. If you spray a very thick varnish on like you're clear coating a panel, you're going to ruin your painting. The goal is just 2 to 3 very thin coats of this varnish. Once you let these coats dry and cure for another few days, you'll have a nice waterproof surface with some UV protection. And then for this one, that's it. I only applied 2 thin coats of this varnish. And then about 4 to 5 days later, where that varnish had some time to cure, I added some D-rings and some wire on the back and then dropped it off the exhibition in Tribeca. This painting went off to a new home, and I know that that varnish is going to protect it for many, many years to come. A few weeks back, we painted this little fire painting, and I'm going to sacrifice this painting for the sake of this video just to show you what happens if you apply too much varnish. So this is going to be an example here of what not to do with your first coat of varnish. This painting had a few weeks to cure, and what I'm spraying here is UV LS Clear. This is the gloss version at 30 psi. I'm moving the spray gun very slowly and really building up a thick layer for this first coat. If the fire painting underneath was done with a stronger paint like Wicked Colors or Golden High Flow, this would be just fine. But with these erasable or re-wettable paints, the binder is very fragile even after that paint is cured. And so I let this varnish dry overnight, and this is what it looks like the next day. These paints do dry strong and form a hard finish, but a thick first layer of varnish is going to re-wet that paint, it's going to activate it, and you're going to get a big mess. And this will happen with any of those varnishes, the Golden, the liquitex, or the createx, if you spray too much as a first layer. So just remember to apply a very thin first coat, and then make sure that you let that dry for 15 to 30 minutes before applying a second thin coat. And just a tip before I go, before you varnish any of your real paintings, always practice applying the varnish on a test piece. Whatever substrate you work on, just do a practice piece on that. Maybe practice some lines, some dots, some dagger strokes, whatever you want. And then let that cure for a few days, 4 to 5 days minimum, and then practice varnishing on that test piece. If something goes wrong or you make a mistake, that's a good thing. You're going to learn something from it. And then once you feel comfortable varnishing a few test pieces, you'll be ready to apply a varnish on your real paintings. So thank you all so much for watching. I do hope that you found this video helpful. And of course, I'd like to thank the generous support of the channel members who help keep this channel going. So thank you all. I'd also like to welcome the newest member, Trevor, for joining at a generous tier 2. Thank you so much and welcome. And I'd also like to welcome back NH, Mir Creative, and Donnie at that very generous tier 3. Really nice of you guys. Thank you all so much. I'll see all of you back here next Friday.